Hi, everybody. I'm Frank Stadici of Open Forum, candid, frank, and live, of course. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, with me on Open Forum is Davidovits. Of Ward, you want to be elected in Ward 8, Eglinton-Lawrence. I'm in a new location. People can't tell. I'm at Eduardo's house. I came all the way from Wasaga Beach to come be close to where you are. Sir, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us an indication of what background you have that may or may not relate to the position you're going for.
First, thank you very much for having me. My name is Philip Davidovits. Actually, my father was David Davidovits. They used to call him King David, and my father would call me Prince Philip. I was the only one, actually, he was the only one who called me Prince Philip. So it was even more confusing, my father's name than my name. But my father was a Holocaust survivor. He came to Canada as a new immigrant. They called him a college boy because he shared a room on top of a store on College Street. My mother, family came from Poland, the turn of the century. They called it Stashev. And there's a lot of Jews from Stashev. You would think Stashev was a big city. Actually, Stashev was a small town, except the whole town moved to Toronto. So you might consider Toronto now New Stashev. And they opened up a store downtown Toronto on Brunswick Avenue, across from the Nariva Synagogue. And at that time, there was a big house with a lot of rooms, and they would rent out the rooms, and you would have one family basically in a room. And the advantage of that is that my grandmother saved a lot of money. She was very tough and tight. They had a chicken store because her mind, if at least they always had something to eat. But over the years, even when the Borders moved out, she saved her money. And when she passed away, she owned 3 houses on Brunswick Street. And the idea is that a house at that time, I think the down payment was $900. You could buy a couch or a house for the same money. And she was always wondering, do I need a couch or should I get another house? And I think after 3 houses, she finally bought a couch. But with the equity of having people living in the house, all the immigrants, she was able to build herself equity and, build her family and move on from there. My father had no money, and he started a business and married my mother, and I'm one of 3 kids, and I think 24 grandchildren my parents have. And my father never planned to buy a house. He had an apartment on Markdale. He said, I can never afford a house. And why did he buy a house? Because Libby, his secretary, bought a house. And my father says, how can you afford a house? I said, I put a little bit of money down and I paid a mortgage. And what I find over the years, the equity that people are left with, they can have business with cash flow, but the equity usually is property they buy. And one of the reasons I'm getting involved in politics is because I find that we're going away from that. The city is taking away the opportunity of people to build up property equity for themselves, and they're letting the big developers, rent the property, and to us, instead of letting us find a way that we can hold on to property. But I've been in business many years. About 12 years ago, I was working real estate for David Thompson Osmington. They're still doing the Union Station overhaul or reconstruction. And he sold most of his other real estate assets. And he asked me what I want to do. And I said, I want to take undervalued American industrial properties and turn it into reshore it. Take companies from China, that Americans who moved in the 80s to China, bring them back to Canada. I said, okay, Phil, go for it. So I went to the old IBM plant in Binghamton, and I went to the old Kodak plant in Rochester. They thought I was crazy. They said, anything we can do, we can import. Why would we want to start bringing back all this old basic manufacturing and create $15 an hour jobs? We only want to create a $70,000 an hour job. But what I learned, the American way, and another thing I want to try to change in our municipality that the Americans are doing better than us is they're allowing the money to stay in the community. So let's say Lawrence Eglinton, which I want to be councilor of, is 120,000 people. Broome County, which is Binghamton, Vestal, where the old IBM plant is 170, 180,000 people. If they bring in outsiders to invest into their city, the money doesn't get blended in with the state. Like here, the money gets blended in to the city and the province. The money stays in the community. And the community has a right to decide if this outside investment is worthwhile to them. So when I went to Binghamton with, the group of people from Toronto, we sat with the five main people who are the biggest companies in Binghamton, and with the Rotary Club and the community. And we had to convince them that it was worthwhile for their community, that the foreign direct investment that we wanted to do, to invest in the community. We don't have that in Toronto. We don't have that in the municipality. Right now, the developers can come into a location, and that money, you don't, even they call it affordable housing, we don't know exactly where the affordable housing is and where the money's going, and giving up the land. I want to see if I can change that dynamics for Lawrence Eglinton. That if we invest, if we're going to bring in outside investors, if that should have a benefit to the people actually living there. So that's why I'm in the game, and I hope to have the opportunity. And once again, I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to talk to you and to your listeners.
It's a great opportunity for us to talk to you as well. And now, I guess there's a lot I can unpack in what you just said. I'll start this way. That if I can review what we talked about in my words, and in my words, what I hear is a man whose roots go back to his grandparents, who had an opportunity to come to this country, purchase a piece of property, have that piece of property affordable, and so that they can work out a way to pay for that property with a house on it, so that
Correct.
they can eventually own the house, and that equity helps them to have a good life. And that's something that's important to you, if I understand what you were talking about.
And uh, when one of the counselors said that they don't allow boarding houses in my area, so
Right.
they don't allow people who are having a trouble now with their paying their mortgages because of the extra increase in the mortgage rate. Now, even if they have enough money to pay the mortgage rate, the bank doesn't look at just that. The bank looks at their ability to pay,
Right.
on an 8% mortgage. So you might have enough money to pay, but the bank will not renew your loan, right, your mortgage, because they don't feel you're earning enough equity out of no fault on your own. What I'm saying is allow the people who who own the houses, you know, for like taxes. Taxes only supposed to be for a short time. Allow them to have boarding houses or other type of rentals for that short time, I guess, until they abolish taxes, and let them rent out the rooms and get an extra $2,000-3,000 a month in rent, so that they can afford to keep on keeping their house and not being forced to being selling their house and moving into a very expensive apartment.
Yeah, the best thing the best I can say that they've allowed, at least in some municipalities, is they've allowed that sort of in-law house. So you
Correct.
could build a small building near the house and you could rent that out. That's the extent they've gone so far. You're asking about taking it a little bit further. That's a great issue, and that's a great thing for people who are here, and voters who are paying taxes and trying to make, again, this is just another way to have affordable housing instead of building or offering a house that's affordable, which really doesn't allow you to build equity, which is what you're talking
Correct.
about. You want to be able to build equity, and the only way to build equity is if your name's on the on the piece of property, not somebody else, is your point. And I agree with you. Let's go a little further instead of getting in the weeds to that. We know that your community, dense population, is becoming a concern. What do you see as the positive and negative of a denser population in your community?
Well, I don't understand, with as much empty square footage as Ontario has, why we need to create more density. unless it's one of two things. Either for an extended family member, we need to find a place for them to live if there's a reason for them that they need to be in the community, or if they're working in that area, then we should try to find a way so that they'll be close to the place where they're working. But in the 80s, when my age group was looking for houses, people went to Thornhill, the Jewish people. The Italians went to Woodbridge. The whole idea of taking, grass and parks and city land and converting it and bringing in outside people to move into that apartments, that's I don't know, that's new, that's out of nowhere. I don't know where they came up with that idea.
I'll say a term. They refer to a term called urban sprawl. What you're talking about, and I agree with you 100%. We need more sprawl. More spread out. I agree with you. That makes a lot of sense. Instead of building up, building wide as opposed to up. But they want to take advantage of transit and stuff like that. Philip, that I think that's what they're trying to do. But I'm just wondering whether the transit can even handle that kind of amount of people.
And understanding that my father, when he bought this house, because his secretary Libby put a mortgage, so he figured he'll have a house also. So when he bought his house in 1959 on Viewmount Avenue, people were just moving into that area. We had the TTC already. We were able to pay for and finance the TTC already with probably 20% of the density that we have now in Lawrence, Eglinton. So why does it take more density to be able to fund the TTC when we're already able to fund it? Why do we have to put more people in those small boxes? Why don't we focus not on Metrolinx? Metrolinx, I think, is a disaster. Why don't we focus on the GO transit system? Make it go even farther away, so that if we're bringing in immigration, because really that's all about immigration. We need 80,000 new homes a year to handle the immigrants. But the immigrants generally, they're coming with money, so it should be self-funding. It shouldn't be a tax on the existing taxpayer, right? That money, where is that money? If that money comes back into the places where they're going, they should be able to work out deals that we're working up to Uxbridge, and that should pay for the cost of the infrastructure to build a housing community up there. I mean, Thornhill, they took over farmland, they took over houses, but there never was a question about cost of the infrastructure because of all the money that area brought in because of the housing.
Yeah, so I guess when you say Eglinton and you say Metrolinx, anybody who lives around Eglinton and Dufferin, Eglinton and Scarlett Road, they really, I guess, it's been a build that's been taking years and years. We're going on decades with that kind of stuff. What can you do to improve the negative feeling you have about Metrolinx? Because it's an important, it spans the whole, Metro Toronto and outside area.
So specifically Metrolinx, we have to revisit the city's relationship with them, and we should be talking to the contractors who are producing for them. Because I think once we investigate, because I've been obviously talking to them, I think we'll find that not just we're not happy with what's going on in Eglinton, I would say that a lot of the people who are subcontracting for Metrolinx could probably build a better box if the core of Metrolinx, would be a different group of people. But going on that topic of Eglinton, one of the main reasons I decided to run for council is that the incumbent, he wants to build even more density, and however he wants to call it affordable housing, I'm not quite sure, because at the end of the day, he's just going to give it to a builder and work out some deal where they're going to label it affordable housing. It's only affordable housing if there's no taxes or anything from the city, but that never happens. The builders will tell you they always have to pay the land transfer tax and the building tax. So there's no, it's a buzzword. It's not a real word. Basically we're subsidizing certain people, but I'm against having anything on Eglinton and Lawrence, and Allen. Well, there's 71 projects already in the works that no one is finishing, because all the contractors, they're busy running 2 hours here, and they're running 2 hours here, they're running 2 hours here. let's finish the 71 projects we have. And after we finish what we have, we can look to see how to do more. But let's finish and let's see the ones that we walk by 2-3 days, nothing is happening. Maybe just clean up the area, put it in abeyance until they have a plan how they want to do it.
Yeah, I know that area. I know your area very well. I grew up. I went to St. Charles. I went to Lawrence Heights. I went to Bathurst Heights. My best friends, some of my best friends whom I'm still in contact with, live behind Bathurst Heights, which is the area you're talking about that they want to tear all down. And just to help people understand in a way what you're talking about, please correct me if I'm wrong. Lawrence Heights, Flemington, whatever, behind there, they were all row houses, right? And so everybody lived this way, was houses going this way. Now what they want to do is they want to take that all down, and now they want to put up big condos. There's people involved right now discussing turning that into a lot of big condos. The same thing's true, and this has nothing to do with you, but I'm saying it's a process that they're talking about. The Jane Finch corridor is going to go from that kind of residential to, again, they're going to go up. So the affordable housing too, if I can ask you, it's my understanding that affordable housing, you can put up a building, and as long as two floors are fit the definition of affordable, that whole building is affordable housing. Am I right about something like that?
No, it's worse than that.
Okay.
The miss that everyone is missing when these people are making a deal calling it affordable housing, they have a term limit on it. I think it's in most cases it's 10 years.
So then it doesn't have to be any more after the 10 years. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Like I'm just getting into this, but they're saying for 10 years we'll do affordable housing, and it's even worse than that. Who decides who gets these affordable housing? The people building it. So look at the people working on those, who's taking the leases of the affordable housing. It's not the people from the community, right?
Now, the intention, my understanding from councillors that are now in power, that's what they want to do. They want to move those people that were there behind Bathurst Heights, the secondary school. They want to move them to affordable housing. The rumor what I hear is down at the end of the Allen Road, they want to put up a big building there. That's the rumor I hear.
I'm saying, so I'm totally against. One of my main strongest challenges is stopping, whether I'm, involved or not, having another 5-10 years of construction at the Allen and Eglinton. And if that's city land, if and when we're ready to do more construction, that should be community land with bike lanes and maybe we can grow stuff, but we don't need to build more. And the other question is, if they're planning to do community housing by Lawrence Heights, because they knew Lawrence Heights was a disaster, why do they want to recreate that disaster at Eglinton? Right?
Well, they weren't really going to build the same thing, though, right, Mr. Davidovits? They weren't going to do the same thing. They were going to go up in the air. They were going to go, I don't know how many floors, but they were going to go, like I said, instead of going this way, right, they're going to go that way.
Okay, but what they're going to do, and I'm taking this from one of your speakers on Wasaga Beach, is they're still creating segregation versus integration.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm a big believer, as the other fellow was saying, in integration. That you should have maximum 10% of a building to be affordable housing, or people who maybe have challenges and maybe need to be looked after. You shouldn't have a whole ghetto of an area. But I also believe that affordable housing shouldn't be done based on the house. Affordable housing should be done based on the person if he qualifies for affordable housing. So in New York, they have what's called HUD. So if you're entitled to HUD, the government will pay directly to the landlord this affordable subsidy that you're entitled to. So if somebody's entitled to affordable housing, he should be able to go rent an apartment anywhere and get the subsidy.
That's a good idea for us, and you think people would vote for you on that prospect? Is that one thing that could help you get elected, do you think?
I hope I get elected, but at least I'm giving people what to think about. Right, I'm trying to give them, understanding that I grew up in Eglinton-Lawrence. I know the people there. We had, I'm Jewish. I had Italian neighbors. Our deal was, if it snowed on Saturday, they would shovel, and if it snowed on Sunday, we would shovel. But for some reason, we never shoveled on Sunday because they would just do it anyway. So we were a community. We need to build a community, helping each other with each weaknesses. But if we have situation, especially with people working there, or if we have family members that their best place is not in their house, we should be able to, for our community, get a grant from the government to be able to put them in, one of the other apartments or that are available, or even in our family house. If let's say a bachelor apartment is $1,500 a month, who can afford at $15 an hour to move into even their own bachelor apartment? So they should be able to be subsidized. So they should be able to afford a bachelor apartment for themselves.
Let's talk a little bit about another topic.
Sure.
This kind of blends in is taxation. Where do you stand on taxation, and how can you help people who are paying taxes, whatever way it is, business, residential, all that stuff? What do you see as what should be what you will do when you go there that'll be different, or just highlight your plan to help people pay taxes?
So how I'm different is because I work with a lot of American counties and states. I learned a lot of what works in America. And I have a lot of small businesses actually now in Caledonia hoping I get in, because my argument is whatever the provinces are giving to $500 million, all these big monies to help the big business people, whatever that category is, whatever the basis of the, small business should be able to apply for the same sort of funding. And we should be really focused on people being able to manufacture and not to be importing, and small and medium-sized company for Eglinton-Lawrence having the benefits that they're giving to the major billion-dollar corporations.
And you would help them to know, small business would be able to come to you and help get, basically, you point them in the right direction to make sure that they enjoy that assistance and funding that bigger businesses have.
Yeah, and I don't know why it's not being offered. Like I had many years ago, I met with Mitchell Sharp. My family helped Mitchell Sharp become the member of Parliament in Ottawa, and my mother used to call Mitchell Sharp every single day. And my mother said, "Look, I call Mitchell Sharp up. He's in the Prime Minister's office. He talks to me for 45 minutes." I said, "Mummy, you're a 70-year-old woman. He's a 90-year-old man. For a 90-year-old man to get a phone call every single day from a 70-year-old woman, it's very exciting." Right? But if you're talking to her anyhow, let me go tell him I want to go and see him. I want to meet him. So I used to go to Ottawa every single month and meet with Mitchell Sharp, and he'd say, "What do you want?" I didn't want anything. I just wanted to sit down and talk to this wise old man who, he would tell me stories about 1948, when Golda Meir, he said, I used to go to Golda Meir's kitchen. She was like my grandmother, he used to describe her. But he said that since I'm here anyhow, I wanted to, you have what's called the Economic Development, EDC, for exports. And I said, the problem with the EDC is was only set up for manufacturers to export to get insurance. Korea built itself up from all the trading companies. Samsung, Gold Star, Sungkyung, Daewoo, they were really essentially in the beginning trading companies. Allow a Canadian trading company to have the same rights as a Canadian manufacturer. And he said, you know what? That's a good idea. Now, that's patronage. I agree. Like, he had no right to make that decision. And he shared an office at the time with Eddie Goldenberg. And right now, from what I understand with the EDC, some people at the EDC still remind me, we remember when you did that there, that a trading company has the same rights. And I believe that Doug Ford, he's not a bad man. He just doesn't know this. But he's busy dealing with so much in a short time. And I think that if we work with him, we'll find a way that's fair for everyone, for that small and medium manufacturers, like they get in the States, will also get in Canada.
What do you think? What do you think you could say to Doug Ford, and how can you speak to Doug Ford on behalf of your community? Aside from that, so you could help speaking to the province about assisting small business in your community to start and to offer. I assume you know exactly the kind of business that you'd find businesses and you would support businesses that have the best chance of survival, right? It's pretty tough. You also have an opportunity to fill buildings that are empty at this time to get them going. Is that essentially what you're trying to do, is build from the ground up, if you will? With
essentially, it's helping the middle class stay middle class, right? I mean, there was an old movie, Save the Tiger. Save the Tiger was Jack Lemmon, and basically explained why America started importing over manufacturing. And it was just easier. It was easier to get funding. It was easier to get it made done. You didn't have all these government walking in to see how to close you to show how tough they would be. We need to change that to make the people, the inspectors, our partners. And Quebec is very much like that. If you go to Quebec and you want to start a business in Quebec, they'll support you with funding. They'll support you with staffing, with training. It's as long as you accept that Quebec is a union-based province and work with the unions, you get there's so much more manufacturing on the middle and small than there is in Ontario. So, and Doug Ford, like once he sees it, because he's a manufacturer himself, I'm sure he'll support it.
The man I was talking to on the phone earlier today, a friend actually, back many years, he said to me, Frank, it's important that we learn how to turn red tape into ribbons. He said, essentially that's the issue. I was just talking to him about that today. Essentially, that's what you're talking about. Make it more possible that the challenges to having a manufacturing business in Canada and specifically in Ontario and your community is that it's really tough for businesses to survive because, quite frankly, the hurdles to operate are much more different than they are, let's say, in China, where they can do whatever they want. We know that they do things differently. Are you sure we can accept that in our community? And is there a compromise you really believe you can strike? I know you said you'd like them to cooperate. What would a compromise look like? What do you think it looks like to ensure that our concerns that we have socially are met by the companies that are manufacturing? Is there a middle ground? Because right now there isn't, because there's too much red tape.
And understanding that the red tape started for a reason. In the 50s, if you would bring in a transistor radio and plug it in the wall and it didn't have proper approvals from CSA or UL, it could blow up on you. So understanding that we've come a long way, and in order to keep people safe, we needed to put these regulations in. Today, if I don't want to be green environment and recycle, my kids will come to my garbage can and separate the garbage. So like we're more, in some ways, we are more strict than a lot of the inspectors are over what has to be done.
Oh, okay. So you're saying we should look at the rules the way they are today and that have been that way for a very long time and modify them to today's standards. And you feel that hasn't been done in a way?
Much more in a way. It's
And you can do that municipally, because I want to make sure that I don't get too far.
Yeah, I'm only talking municipal. I'm talking right now. I have 3 companies near Caledonia and Orphis. I have a couple of manufacturers that want a joint venture with them. That I could do it very quickly with a little bit of provincial help. Less what they gave to the big companies, to Ford and General Motors. All this $500 million to each, and we could create jobs and like. When I was with AmCham, I was chairman of American Chamber of Commerce. It was all about foreign direct investment. It was all about creating $71,000 a year job. They didn't want to make. He told me, the governor of Missouri, I don't want to create $15 an hour Starbucks jobs. So the opportunity is there. We have the right workforce. We have good people. We have the lifestyle. With the reality of inflation, we need people to be able to make more money to catch up to inflation. And that's with local manufacturing, for sure.
Yeah, and it's the point of why we should have good technology, right? Because that helps too as well.
Correct. And the technology and the people here working together to use the existing. It's one thing to have technology. It's a nice buzzword, but there's technology available that we're actually not using because everybody wants a quick fix. They don't want to say, we take it now, we're going to save over 5 years. They're looking, they're worried about their job in 6 months. So they need to show immediate returns. We need to get away from those immediate returns and say, these are the right things to do. That's one of the reasons why China is successful, because, they look at 20, 30-year plan, but we should look at, General Electric always looked at a 5-year plan. We should go back to the 5-year plan.
What other responsibilities do you think as a councillor, a municipal, and I'll remind people that you're vying for Ward 8, Eglinton-Lawrence. what are the things that municipal leaders should be thinking about in your mind, and what would you pursue that we haven't talked about as yet?
Oh, so my first thing I'm going to pursue the first week on council is this idea that it's a criminal offense to not pay your TTC. So right now, if the bylaw officers so choose, if let's say I'm in the park and I lose my Presto card and I have no money on me and I want to get home, or if my 10-year-old son wants to get home, right? This bylaw officer can decide to be, maybe he had a bad day. I can be charged criminally, taken to provincial court for the next 2-3 years, be involved in court on it. Like, that's nonsense. And yes, there's a lot of people not paying the fare, which should be paying the fare. I'd say 90% of the regulars, the bylaw officers knows who they are. Let's take that part away. But, when they go after the homeless people, and I'm working actually at Dufferin and Finch in the courts with some of the homeless people, and to reverse some of these tickets they got, because they'll leave their shelter because they're thrown out of their shelter in the morning. Where do they go? There's nothing to do. So they go on a TTC and they get stopped. And a lot of times, where are they going on the TTC? They're going to a food bank, Scott Mission or something, because Scott Mission, I think, has a library. So they shouldn't be ticketed. Like, what's the point? And the problem is, a lot of these people have mental illness as well. So that only depresses them more. So it's not helping anyone. So that part of running the TTC and not paying your $3.25 fare is a criminal offense, which is charged provincially. That's my first step. I'm doing that the first week.
A lot of those shelters, though, I have knowledge, and I do know that a lot of those shelters offer bus tickets as well. But I think to your point, I understand your heart's in the right place, and you want to show some compassion for the homeless, which is a concern sometimes because people don't want to see homeless people. I don't want to see them. And I'm saying that, facetiously. What do we do about that kind of stuff? You've offered a solution. I appreciate that. But what do we do about, you were talking about children too, and schools and education in your community? Are you happy with the way they are? Are there changes you like to see?
Well, I'll get back to the homeless guy. I have more to say. I'm very involved.
If you want to say more, we'll move to the schools. We've got a little bit of time left, so it's all yours. Whatever you want to
do. But on as far as it goes with the schools, they want to bring in so much more density. I don't see that they have the schooling to back it. Like, they want to bring in all these people in, right, to create more density. How does that fit into their plan for the schooling? Are they going to bus them? So I don't understand their plan. And, I would say that even if people have a great idea to build more housing in a logical way, what age group are they looking to put into that housing, and how are they going to educate them? And I think that when you see the reality that, they're tearing down schools more than they're building schools, I don't think we have the schooling infrastructure to handle as many people they want to put in that density. But getting back to the homeless people, I mean, I work with different not-for-profit groups, and I've actually worked on some plans that I plan to execute pretty quickly. And I've actually spoken to unofficially at the Ford government on this. So I was involved with the Jewish synagogues and Jewish schools during the lockdown. And I helped organize consensus to find a way that 10 in a gathering would be allowed in synagogues. And then I was involved with the idea in schools where you can go for prayer. And then when they did the Section 22, I was very involved in getting it reversed. So it allowed me to see that the biggest reason why we have these big fights with the police and the bylaw officers and Toronto Public Health is because the people who are making these decisions are not communicating what their true intent is. So when I organized the meeting with the mayor and some of the councilors and some of the people from the city and public health, we found the solution consensus right away, and it worked for everybody. And it's also, we gave each other mutual respect. So we didn't have to, to be like, calling the police and chasing on that. So I'm good on consensus. But as far as the shelters go, there is a need for some people that can't be helped with the shelters. If the boarding house system gets approved, that we're allowed to have rent out rooms, there's a huge opportunity for a lot of the people who are well, it's not a one size fit all, to move into. Like my father lived in a boarding house and he had a guy, and my father used to ask the guy, "Why are you so crazy?" And he said, if you would have gone through what I went through during the Holocaust, you also would be crazy. But at the end of the day, he lived in a boarding room, right? So there's a lot of people on the streets that a lot of people will have to stay in a shelter. A lot of people are more comfortable living outdoors than indoors. You're not going to change everything. It's not one size. But a lot of people can live in the boarding rooms. And a lot of people, too, with this problem with the elderly, instead of saying we're going to move them 300 kilometers away from the hospitals, why don't we offer the families whatever money it's going to cost them to move away? And it's not good for everybody, but for some, why don't we offer them the opportunity to get that money that they can look after their family and their kids and whoever it is with either mental illness or elderly, but give them the money instead of saying, well, we only have a place in Bowmanville who can take care of them.
Absolutely. So, in as far as we've got a few minutes left, we've got a few more minutes left. What other topics do you want the voters to know that you're on their side for, and even understanding exactly what your plan is that we haven't shared with them as yet?
So the government's allowing money for medical professionals for public health. It's clearly, and they feel that the hospitals, for whatever reason, are not able to give the type of service outside, and instead of putting more pressure on the hospital, they're allowing that to inside. So I'm suggesting that we need to work through our not-for-profits to set up urgent care and hospice and with local doctors who know the people to help the people of their community. And I'm not creating, the money's already allocated. So whatever money is allocated, let's use that money locally to help the people in our community and not send them away from the community.
Okay. I'd like to talk to you from the perspective as a councilor. How important is it to work with people outside of your community? Is there any benefit to that? Do you see from your perspective that working outside the Eglinton-Lawrence area, the relationship Ward 8 should have with other wards in Toronto?
So I really look forward, because during the lockdown, obviously, I worked with Jay Pasternak from York, and I worked with Matt Lowe from St. Paul's. And, so I think on certain matters that concern us all, especially with the seniors issues there, I think that there's a lot of stuff we can do together. But I'm not out to save the world. I'm out to...
But let's drill down there. Seniors, I'm one.
Okay.
I care about seniors. What do you see as what needs that in your mind that you're hearing that the help seniors need to make their lives better? I know you were talking about housing and stuff like that, but most of them live in a house that, a lot of them live in a house that's almost empty because they suffer from empty nest syndrome, if you will. So how do you translate that, and how does that fit into your plan and what you think is good for seniors in your community?
So my area, there's a couple of different ways. My area basically are people who had houses in Thornhill, who sold their houses and bought condos by St. Clair and Spadina, which is one solution. But for a lot of people want to stay in their house, but as they get older, they need care. And they're under a lot of pressure being alone to get that care. So they get some care from the city, but really, if we look at the amount of care they get in assisted living, and if we would take 25% of the money that we're giving that we would give them if they were assisted living, and give them more care at home, I would say that it's a better balance, and let them stay at home as long as they can.
Perfect. At Eglinton-Lawrence, another thing that I worry about. The one thing I loved about that area is golf courses, parks. It sounded to me we didn't focus on them. But how do you feel about green space in your community?
Okay, so getting about what you're talking about, golfing and parks. I grew up being a bike rider, So one of the biggest concerns that I, as city councilor, that I'm going to defend is not to give speeding tickets to people going on a bike in the city. And I think that the reason why they're doing that is because eventually they want to force the bikes to license, and also to force the bikes to have to get insurance. So this is saying, look how dangerous the bikes is. We got to put some licensing on it. We got to put some insurance on it. Now, I don't know if you remember when when mopeds came in the 70s. So I had a moped, a Jawa, and all of a sudden you had to license it and be a certain age. So now with the e-bikes, it's just waiting to happen. So I definitely want to fight against licensing. I mean, as a kid, there was a hill on Shermount, and at that time we still had gutters. I used to love to race down that hill and slide my bike into the gutter. So I can just see now police stopping me and giving me a ticketing for it, like ridiculous.
Let's talk a bit about the future. How do you see, if you're elected, and when you look back 4 years later, what do you hope that you'll see that you've changed?
See nobody having to sell their house because of the more mortgage. A lot of the people who are living in apartment buildings finding a way, that they're renting rooms and that, to have more money, maybe among the 4 or 5 of them investing in their own house, finding a way to have more local food delivered affordably. I don't know if you realize it. Um, they raised the price of dairy 25% in the last year, straight from government taxes. Like, what's all that about? Are the cows more expensive?
That had to do with the deal they made with the U.S., bringing U.S. milk here. Our milk got more expensive along the way.
Well, I mean, I love to bring in U.S. milk. It's so much more cheaper. It's more lobbying to protect the farmers, right? Giving them the 25% more. And it's both provincial, so you can't blame the liberals and you can't blame the conservatives, because both, the conservatives agreed to it provincially, the liberals agreed to it federally. But we need to find a way to have more affordable food, that food should not, in our life, food should not be an issue. In France, they just made a law that supermarkets cannot throw out food. They have to give it to the homeless.
That's predominant in
Right?
Europe. Yep, it's predominantly in Europe.
So definitely, like my plan is right away is to open up a couple of soup kitchens that serve the community, and people can give and take. And I'm involved now with a local not for profit that we deliver food and money to people on a pretty regular basis. And you'd be surprised, like that extra $100, $200. That's the difference what they eat and when they eat. So we
Yeah,
need to be aware of our community to give them the extra food.
that's another example of overregulation. If you talk to somebody, I'm not saying it is, but that is what people say. Like, a lot of food gets thrown away because of the regulation that they can't sell it. And in Europe, they've driven home the point that, okay, maybe they can't sell it, but let the people who are using it check it out, and what they feel is good they'll keep, and what isn't good they'll throw out and use it. And they are using it in places where people who are food insecure get a chance to benefit from food that's just literally rotting away in the garbage, which in my mind, like my parents came from Europe, and they came and they appreciated what the money that they spent. They realized they were starting from scratch. It's hard starting from scratch, but I'll tell you something. There are Canadians who are second, third generation that are in the same boat at this time, and so it's not about immigration, it's about people. And it sounds to me like you care about people regardless, that everybody at some point, or people everywhere, need some help. And it's not about any label we want to throw on them. It's just people need help, and you want to find out how to help them. And so we've talked about how you want to help them with housing, how you want to help people stay middle class or get better. You've talked about taxes. You've talked about restrictions and basic, things, that expectations that the government has, changes we can make to make business work easier, people eat faster, and people ride around on their bikes. So have we
Yes.
missed anything? I want to make sure I don't miss anything, Mr. Davidovits.
Well, I also like during the lockdown, I felt the police were busy doing politics as opposed to their job. And I'm going to work with the police, Toronto Public Health, bylaw officers, that they should be there to serve the community. I mean, I think it was the biggest miss that the focus wasn't on the long-term care. I think, and we're still making that mistake. We're still not focusing on long-term care. So, after I fix the issue with the TTC and work out the urgent care centers for the elderly, not to go 300 kilometers away, I plan to make sure the Toronto Public Health spend more time in long-term care and not looking after the 5-year-olds, which they were doing.
Yeah, and worried about, are you wearing a mask and should you be wearing a mask?
Correct. And my question to you about the mask, I'm still trying to figure it out. Right now they say, don't judge someone who is or who isn't. Let them make their choices. But the people who make a choice with a mask, they're choosing to wear a mask because they're protected. But in the best case scenario, they're not getting protected. They're protecting someone else. So
Absolutely.
they're protecting someone who doesn't care. And while they themselves are not being protected. So we need to protect the vulnerable for sure. So if there's areas or something, I would love to have in Wasaga Beach, I'd love to have a Century 55-year-old plus area where people like me can, next time there's a lockdown or something, we can just.
I'll talk to the councilors that are running. I'm surprised we're talking about Wasaga. I'm in Toronto now.
I'm
working at Eduardo's house, so I'm not in Wasaga. I can't step out the door and yell at a councilor. I suppose I can.
Yeah, I'm saying so there needs to be something to the 55-year-olds. There are times when there's a heavy flu season or a heavy some type of other virus. They should be in their bubble. They shouldn't be with people who are, maybe transmitting, that have a stronger immune system. Yeah. But that should be the focus, not the focus on I'll wear a mask to protect the other guy because I'm not protecting myself.
Absolutely. I hear what you're saying, and that you're a brave man. I have to tell you, Mr. Davidovits, you're a brave man to bring up anything that's pandemic-ish. Because I don't know how that's going to help you in an election. I tell you, I got to tell you, I wear a mask when I'm asked to because I'm supposed to. I wear a mask if I'm not feeling well, just in case, because I don't want to make somebody else sick. And I understand what you're saying. On our program on Candid Frank Live with Aaron, which we'll do at 6:00, we're always talking about we don't mind wearing a mask. We don't mind being, getting the needle, vaccinated, all that stuff, because we feel we're doing it not just for us, but we're doing it for everybody. And from your position as a councilman, you're hoping to inject some of that, no pun intended, inject some of that kind of feeling. We're working together and creating a better understanding as to why you're saying you'll do a good job of explaining to people so they understand, right? That's part of the process, correct?
Of course.
So, I wonder sometimes, because when it comes to politics and when it comes to municipal politics, tell me a little bit about municipal politics and how you feel, is the system that we have a good enough one? Are you happy with the way the system is? Back in Wasaga, we have basically councilors voted for no wards. You're happy with the ward system? It's a good way of doing things. Is there a way that you can massage the ward system to make it work better?
My only thing that I want to try to find a reset for is the idea that basically the council works really under the provincial.
Right.
And the provincial right now wants to make more decision on what benefits the whole province as opposed to the specific municipality. I'm fighting that. I'm saying
so
no.
In other words, you would look at the Municipal Act and wonder if there might be changes that should be made there, which is basically, the municipalities across Ontario, it's their Bible.
Yeah, I'm saying so. I pretty much, when I wrote my what I want to do, I followed the guidelines of the Municipal Act to see what I'm allowed to do. And, because shelters is under my part, like city, I believe that my mandate is doable if I work with the provincial levels and they are going to give me the chance. And if they see it works in my municipality, other councilmen will also see, hey, this is great. I'm gonna do it the Phillip way next time, and we're going to create more business. And I'll tell you even more. We have in New York the 5 towns. So 5 towns is Lawrence, Cedarhurst, Woodmere, and two more places. And the way it works, each one has different taxes based on how much business they do. So if they're attached to industrial, the house taxes are lower. So we need to have a way here that people will want to have more business in Lawrence Eglinton, because that'll help the price of what you're paying on tax. When I worked with the old IBM plant, it was 6 million square foot warehousing, and IBM pulled out of most of the building. The world supercomputer is still housed there. I used to use Tom Watson's office on the clock tower there from IBM, and they were angry because they were giving money from the city to build this new business, and then they realized that this money helped subsidize the cost of the houses that they had to pay less tax. And all of a sudden they were so happy. And it was the same thing in Batavia. Batavia, Chuck Schumer, to his credit, really lobbied to bring in Chobani. When Chobani Yogurt went into Batavia, all the people were complaining because all the money that was given to Chobani, until they saw their tax price go down. Because if there's more money in an area, there's less taxes. We don't have that in the municipality.
Right. So and you're talking, I want to clarify so people understand. I believe you're talking about Batavia, New York.
Correct.
And I believe you're talking about Senator Chuck Schumer.
Correct. So he really fought. Senator Chuck Schumer really fought to help Chobani go into Batavia. That's the milk capital of upstate New York.
Yeah, Albany.
Albany. But by Batavia, that's where they do all the.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, okay. In reality, not on paper. In reality, it's the capital.
So when Chobani was able to bring in all this revenue that stayed in Batavia, and the people who lived in Batavia had to pay less house taxes, then they appreciated Chobani being there. And we need to find a way in Toronto. If I bring in manufacturing to Caledonia and all that, and there's more taxes coming through, and more of the people who live in the area can work in that area and get training for those jobs, then the taxes for the houses should go down for that area.
So in other words, there has to be a balance between business and residents, so that the income, like, we hear about how rich people don't pay their share of taxes. If you listen to the guy down south. But businesses do pay a little more in tax. They cover they use less space, but they pay a little more in tax. So that if you have homes, because they're more concentrated, right? A business is more concentrated, they'll generate more capital for the community. And if they generate more capital from the community, there's less stress on the residential. We have the same problem in Wasaga Beach, where we have Wasaga Beach. I keep getting told. We have 5% business, 95% residential. That's not a very good mixture. It doesn't bode well for the taxpayers, because if there's an increase in taxes, you can't get it all from the business because there isn't enough. So you have to take it from residential. So there has to be a balance struck there. And what you're saying is you're paying attention to that. And that's something why we talked about at the beginning. We're going back to the beginning, where you want to help small business work out, because those taxes will help offset taxes in the community, which means residential people won't be leaned on alone to pay taxes and to cover the expenses as they change from time to time.
Correct. And to that end, I think we have a couple more minutes.
Go ahead.
When I worked in Binghamton and they were angry that I was creating $15 an hour jobs, they stopped being angry at me when they saw that the people who didn't have jobs were feeding the drug trade. So people need to do something. If they're not going to do something productive, they're going to go the different way. And the drug trade, of course, it's hard on the healthcare system.
Yeah, that's not good. Well, Mr. Philip Davidovits, I really wish you a lot of luck in Ward 8, Eglinton-Lawrence. It was a pleasure meeting you, and thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All the best. Okay.
I'm Frank
Stanishi. I'm Frank Stanishi. He is Philip Davidovits. And of course, this show is Candid Frank Live's Open Forum, which is live Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Network. For Open Forum, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out Spanglish World. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. See you next time, everybody.